This is an episode of Listening to Canberra Voices. This podcast is produced and brought to you by students of the University of Canberra, Faculty of Arts and Design, 2024. Before we begin, we would like to acknowledge the Ngunnawal and Ngambri people, who are the traditional custodians of the land on which this show is produced.
Hi, I'm your host. My name's Ella. I'm joined by my co-host here, Connor.
Hello.
And our guest today is Sylvia.
Hi.
Do you want to tell us a bit about yourself and what you do?
I am a local Canberran, born and bred. I work a million different jobs.
We will get into that later.
Yeah, maybe we'll get into that a bit later.
Shall we get into the meat and potatoes of this discussion?
Sure.
Chronologically speaking, it'd be a good place to start at the beginning. Sylvia is also a second-generation migrant. Her grandparents, I believe, came over from China?
No, it's my parents.
Parents, sorry about that.
Yeah, my parents actually met in Canberra.
Wow.
And I'm pretty sure they just met randomly in the Civic Mall. They just discovered that they both happened to be from the same hometown, Shanghai, and that's how it all started. My dad was a visiting scholar and he just loved Australia so much he just decided to stay here.
Wow.
And pretty much has made it his home. And my mum came with her best friend to study as international students. So that's how they ended up in Australia.
Wow.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
What drew him to Australia so much?
Well, my dad was sent here from his university. He was a linguistics specialist and he speaks perfect English.
Yeah.
So he came here on an errand, but then just decided that this place was so great that
He just wanted to stay.
Whereas my mum, I think they just wanted more educational opportunities. Her best friend really wanted to study abroad, so they were thinking either the US or Australia, and I don't really know why they ended up
They liked our accents
choosing
more.
Australia. Probably.
Yeah.
I think so. That must be it, actually. I should have thought of that before.
Yeah.
That was 100% why they came here.
The next question I guess I have, especially after hearing that, is has your parents' experience and decisions regarding their move over here influenced the way that your own decisions or the way that you see this country?
Actually, for me, it started probably before my parents with the story of my grandma. She had an absolute thirst for education. But she came from the countryside and over there, only some of the boys would get some basic schooling if they were lucky, if their parents could afford them to spare them from some farm work. And my grandma really wanted to go to school. She wanted to learn how to read and write and do sums like the boys in her village. And her father was actually really supportive of her desire to go to school. And she was actually the first and only girl in the village to go through school.
Wow.
And there was still limited education in the village, so she later moved on to Shanghai. And that's where she actually did high school, college and university as a mature age student.
Oh my
so
gosh.
imagine redoing year 7, as a 20-something year old.
Yeah.
Wow.
So there was a lot of, humility involved, and she worked really, really hard. She didn't have a lot of money, so she was studying full-time by day, working as a nanny by night. And during this time, she actually met my grandpa, who was serving in the military, and together they had 3 children, including my mum. But I remember my grandma telling me that she was still studying at uni when she was pregnant with her first child. And, she had to stay home a lot of the time to rest as soon as, especially as her due date was coming. And her classmates would go and visit her and bring her class notes from after school. They really helped her get through her uni degree while she was pregnant. And she ended up getting a degree in chemical engineering, which was amazing. She had a professional career whilst raising 3 kids of a husband who was often deployed. And it was really hard. And so my grandpa then made a really monumental decision to retire from the military pretty young, despite his rank and legendary reputation that he apparently had. It would have only propelled him further into his career, but he actually chose to retire really prematurely so he could stay in town and be more present for his family. And that is quite unusual as well.
Yeah.
He didn't have the opportunity to get any higher education, unlike my grandma. So he joined the military when he was 16. And so when he retired from the military, he really just worked in a factory for the rest of his working life.
Wow.
This is actually a perfect segue onto our next topic. When it comes to education, what drew you to music and law?
Well, music has always been a part of my life. I'm pretty sure my mum was like playing music when I was still in the womb, barely existing.
Yeah.
And then after I was born, I'm pretty sure she exposed me to all kinds of music. And then I started formal training, like learning how to play piano and stuff when I was 5 years old. And so I've been playing music pretty much all my life. And so that was sort of something that I guess I always knew that I would probably do. It's something I'm very comfortable with. I know it really well. I've done it from such a young age. And so even as a relatively young person just starting uni, it was already something that I felt I had quite a lot of experience on. And so I definitely wanted to do something that I was quite good at or felt confident in, that I was interested in. I was probably interested in it because I got quite good at it. And as for law, I think that one was just a bit of a fluke, really, to be honest.
A fluke how?
I was just, throughout the process of applying for different degrees, I just put everything with music. So I'd be like music of law, music of psych, music of arts. So I was just I just thought I would apply for a bunch of double degrees with music because I thought I wanted to do something alongside music. And Australia is one of the unique places that do double degrees. They're not common in anywhere else, I don't think.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I wanted to do something with music and I wasn't sure what, but I just put everything down and I figured I'll do whatever I get.
Yeah, whatever comes to you, you'll do.
And I think law had a pretty high entrance score, so I put that at the top because I figured it was harder to get in.
Yeah.
But I did actually get into the law program, which was great, probably because I did double music during year 11 and 12, and that really bumped up my ATAR.
Yep.
Yeah.
Focusing on music for the next little while, do you play multiple instruments or do you have an instrument of choice?
So you probably know this, Connor, but my
Yes.
main instrument is the piano. I'm a professional pianist. I studied piano at university.
Yeah.
So it's definitely my best instrument, the instrument that I've played for the longest. I did formally study violin and cello and voice during high school and college, but they're sort of secondary instruments. So like I can play them. I'm not that great, but I can play them to a decent standard, I suppose. And then self-taught on guitar, so I play a fair bit of guitar as well.
Is there anything specific about the piano that you enjoy the most?
It is a great foundational instrument. It's very symmetrical, so you can actually practice for a very long time without feeling any fatigue in the body because you're sitting centered, your positioning is very centered. You're not sort of lopsided or doing things with different hands. So you can practice a lot. You also have the keyboard, which helps you visualize a lot of and understand a lot of theory behind music. And so it's a really, really good first instrument. Also not very hard to make a sound. Most other instruments, it's actually really hard to actually produce a sound, which is why you usually only play one note at a time. But on the piano, it's really easy. You just hit a key, really easy to sound pretty good, even if you haven't played before. As a beginner, you can sound pretty good pretty soon.
I mean, goodness knows when I get close to a piano, it's like...
Yeah. Whereas, an instrument like the violin, you can sound pretty terrible, unfortunately, for the first few years.
Exactly.
So definitely a very good starting instrument and very easy to pick up other instruments once you've had some piano experience. Yeah.
Is there often a division between what you consider objective, like your greatest achievements or your personal favorite achievements in your music career?
Probably things like the first piano competition that I ever won. My piano teacher had entered me and she came with me. We picked her up and then we went to my dad and my sister, I think. We all went with my piano teacher to the competition venue And it was my very first one, so I was pretty nervous. And I also wasn't sure what it was going to be like.
Yeah.
And then I won it, to my great surprise, because there was another guy who had won like all the previous rounds.
Yeah.
And he had won that very competition the past 2 years in a row. So he was just amazing. And for some reason, the adjudicator thought, oh, no, I think Sylvia's going to win this one. So I was completely surprised. But it was just so cool to see my piano teacher and how happy she was that I'd won. And so I remember that. And then she, afterwards she said, oh, Sylvia, I'm proud of you. She's a really old lady, excellent piano teacher, excellent pianist as well. But that's probably one of my favourite achievements, even though it's probably long forgotten now, really. I believe it's still running, the competition.
Yeah.
But it's something from quite a long time ago, so I don't necessarily mention it. Or there have been, so many other musical experiences that I've experienced since. But this one is probably one of my favourites because of the relationship I've had with my piano teacher and her influence on me. She's in her 90s now and she's still around.
Wow.
Not teaching anymore, but she's great.
Fantastic. Do you have any other stories like that or some other achievements that you'd like to share?
I really enjoy playing with the defence community. That's something that I do regularly, and we've been able to play at some pretty special occasions. We've played for I believe we've played for prime ministers and royalty as well. Wow. So they've been special, and usually for a pretty good cause as well. So that's been really great. I don't really have any defence connections. I mean, my grandpa was in the military, but that was in China. I don't have any Australian defence connections. So it's really special to be able to be really involved with the defence community as somebody who's just a normal civilian.
Yeah, he's just not part of defence, whereas everyone else in that group who do music are.
Yeah, you just get to play piano and leave.
Yeah. Well, they've definitely been more than welcoming to me. I actually feel like I'm a part of them. They've made that. They've always taken extra care to make sure that I feel really included and that I'm one of them, even though I'm not technically one of them.
Well, music is always driven connection between all sorts of people. So I wouldn't be shocked. I'm not shocked at all to hear that you'd be very special to them.
Yeah, it's definitely a language that everyone can understand. I mean, one of my favourite songs, it's like a beginner's piano song, and it's called Happy and Sad. And, you can be a complete beginner piano player and you can probably learn it within a few weeks of learning piano from scratch. But I love it because you play it, and no matter who you're playing it to, it can be someone you don't speak the same language with, from completely different culture, different age, and they'll know straight away which bit is happy and which bit is sad. And that's really, really cool. And of course there are other more complex songs that do the same thing, but to be able to explain that really simply, it's actually one of my favorite piano pieces that I'll teach pretty much everyone who's interested.
Fantastic. I'm very curious to hear more about your own band, Napoleon Ice Cream. Where does the name come from? What kind of music do you guys do? And really, who are the other band members as well? Of course, it can't just be a one person show.
So I'm actually the newest member of the band. So it wasn't my band to begin with. I'm the newest member. We have probably the brainchild of the band is Resh, who is our drummer, but also the lead singer, which is a pretty cool combo.
That's very unique combo.
Yeah, you don't get that a lot.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And then we have her best friend Sophia, who is on lead guitar, brilliant guitarist, and Brian on bass, who is great as well. And so they're like family. They were really, really close, and I'm the random fourth member that came and joined. So I believe they were called Napoleon Ice Cream because they were trying to think of things in threes, because they were a trio before. And so they thought, like Neapolitan ice cream. I don't know why they ended up with Napoleon, but I really liked it because we're all second generation migrants in the band. And because I was an ESL student, I learnt English as a second language for 6 years.
Yeah.
I, for the longest time, had mispronounced Neapolitan ice cream, and I'd always called it Napoleon ice cream. Even my dad thought it was Napoleon ice cream. I think he taught me, actually. He told me, hey, this ice cream, it's Napoleon ice cream. And so for ages, I thought it was Napoleon ice cream. And then eventually, I don't know how I found out, but I realized I'd pronounced it wrong the whole time. So I actually really like the name. It does remind me of my background.
Yeah.
And I think that was the case for my band members as well. I think a lot of them also had that same misconception. So
Oh, I'm pretty sure most English speakers have the same misconception
You
as
reckon?
well.
Okay,
Actually,
that makes
Yeah.
me feel a bit better.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who also just English their
Napoleon
first language
ice cream?
that will call it
Alright.
Napoleon ice cream as well.
We tend to look at a big word and we remove most of the letters to find an easier word because we're lazy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think for all uni students would love to know, like, how do you manage and, you know, keep up the like success with like the busy schedule? Like, how do you manage it?
That's the second hardest question.
I know.
I'm on a roll.
And I was thinking, yeah, am I managing it? Maybe.
Do you feel like you're managing it?
Not always.
No.
But I think I try to, you know, just not sweat it really. You know, if I don't get everything done, I don't get everything done. That's okay. I think people I work with understand that I'm just doing my best. Something I always keep in mind is that the word perfect, a long time ago, or the root of the word perfect really means complete. And so often I sort of think about that. I think a lot of people, or nowadays, the word perfect has somewhat been misconstrued, or there's just sort of this new unachievable definition about it, like, oh, you know, you have to do this perfectly, or I can't do this unless if I'm doing this perfectly. When you think about it, and its meaning as in complete, I think that's a lot more manageable. And I think, you know what, I can complete this and I can do this. I can do a perfect job of all of these little things, one at a time. And again, like, even if I don't, that's okay. I think, you know, the people around me, the community around me, they know that I'm just trying to do my best. And I believe they would do the same for just about anyone. So
Yeah. I just want to say thank you so much for joining us on this podcast with us.
you're
So
very
thank you.
welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Listening to Canberra Voices.
Mm.
I've been Connor. This is my
Ella.
co-host Ella. And thank you again so much, Sylvia. We've well established that you're a very, very busy person. So for you to come into the studio and to take time off and to coordinate with me so much has been it's meant a lot to me. And I think it's meant a lot to all of us. So thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me here.